All right.
We're ready to go.
Excellent. Well, we're excited that you're here today, and thank you for joining us as we do our webinar. It's ARD We There Yet? The Roadmap to a Successful Annual ARD Meeting. And my name is Megan Sanders, and I am the Training and Evaluation Specialist for Partners Resource Network. Joining me today, you have Christina. And Christina, did you want to say hi?
Hi, everybody.
And you have Chuck No, who is our Education Specialist. Hey, Chuck.
Good morning, everyone.
So Partners Resource Network is a nonprofit agency. We operate the Texas statewide network of parent training and information centers. PTIs are funded by the U.S. Department of Education and the Office of Special Education Programs, known as OSEP. Our Texas projects are PATH, PEN, and TEAM. We provide training and education, information and referrals, emotional support, and individual assistance in obtaining appropriate services. And that is our little spill about us. So today, our big objectives are to go over your annual ARD and IEP meetings. It's answering those 5 W questions. We're going to talk about documentation, parent tips for successful IEP meetings, the rules and requirements for extended school year, and tips for transition. I do want to point out that we have the chat box at the bottom right of this screen. This is how you know we're going to be interacting in our chat box. And so I want to start by just asking you what your reason for attending the webinar today is. Okay, we have somebody just to gather more information for success. Stacy had an ARD this morning. To learn more about the ARD and IEP process. Good. Learning about IEPs in relation to the IEEs for Kimberly. Tips and tricks to better navigate the ARD process, hopefully peacefully. Well, I hope so too, Leslie. Let's see. And Christina, my chat box kind of froze up, so let's see.
It helps if I unmute myself. Okay, so about where did we leave off? I was doing some TA.
Leslie said, learn tips and tricks to better navigate the ARD process.
Okay, so we've got Molly Teague as an educator. I want to get more info on parents' understanding and where we can do better in helping them through the ARD process. Excellent. Mary says transition to middle school and special ed. Rachel, son is currently in PPCD. Hopefully get some info on transitioning to kindergarten.
Okay.
We have one of our new RCs in training joining us today. She says, go Megan. Shemaine.
Well, thanks.
Janice says our school is trying to move our first grade son into FAC from general ed.
Okay, so a lot of just learning about the ARD process, either as a professional or as a parent, getting some tips. Looks like understanding some placement. And then some transition. Very good. So we've got a good group in here. And hopefully we are able to answer all those questions for you guys today. If we don't cover them in the webinar, we'll have a Q&A session at the end with Chuck, and he'll be able to help further as well. Okay, so let's get started. With all of our presentations, we want to start with a reference to key legislation. And we have several for you this month, so we're going to go over real quick and look at, maybe, if it cooperates, there we go. We're going to look at our framework. And Christina will be adding that link in the chat box. So a few things we want to point out to you today that we'll cover, several pieces of legislation, are down here. So we have our legal framework website, and you have publications. We have the Notice of Procedural Safeguards. Those are your rights. We have the Parent's Guide to the ARD process. And then we have Special Education Rules and Regulations. And Christina will be sharing all three of those links, but you can also pull them from the framework site directly. And you can also grab the link if you want to take a picture with your phone of the QR code that is on the slide. Let's see.
Hey, Megan, real quick,
yes.
We had someone ask a question, it's pretty pertinent. She asked, is this applicable to all regions? I believe she's talking about the documents in the website. Yes, it is applicable for the whole state of Texas.
Absolutely. And just because it says ESC 18, this is Texas state. It's applicable in all of our regions. And then we wanted to introduce you to another really awesome resource, and I'm going to click over to that. This is the timeline decision tree for the child-centered special education process. And it's designed by TEA as well as the Education Service Center for 18. It's an interactive tool to help users understand the legal requirements of special education process. So we're going to go down and look at this for just a minute. So let's see. There we go. So you see this timeline, and it covers different things. It covers prior written notice, consent, reevaluations, written requests, procedural safeguards, things like that. So just to go down and show you one example, the question is, when a prior written notice is given, what is the timeline for initiating or changing? And you have four options here. You can do identification, placement, provision of FAPE, or evaluation. So let's just click on evaluation, and it pops up with an answer. That a prior written notice must be given to the parent 5 school days before initiating or changing the evaluation, identification, or placement of the student, and before initiating or changing provision of a free appropriate public education, or FAPE. And so that gives you that quick answer. You also notice down here that there's a legal framework link, and it says prior written notice. If we click on that, it takes us in the framework where the law is actually covered. So you can see federal and state requirements and get the actual citations. So that's a really cool resource for parents to use, and that will be in the chat box as well as on our website later today. Let me try to click out of sharing. There we go. Okay, so again, if you can't get the links right now, don't worry. We do post all of our resources shared during the webinar today on the statewide webinars page. And Christina will share that link several times in the chat box throughout the presentation. And you'll receive it in the thank you email for attending a little later today. So I want to begin with an overview of the ARD meeting itself. We want to discuss the 5 W questions. Who needs to be in attendance? What can you expect from the annual ARD? When and where should it take place? And why is it so important? So who is included? When we discuss the ARD committee, it's always important to remember that you as the parent are a key player of the ARD committee. You know your child best. You know what works, you know what doesn't work. You are truly there to speak as the expert on your child. Other people in attendance, you will have at least one regular education teacher. They are the in-house expert for grade level content and curriculum, or the TEKS. With inclusion being the law, this teacher should have experience with a student under special education at the level it's appropriate for the student. We're going to have at least one special education teacher. They are usually at the forefront of creating the goals with the team's input. They monitor the progress, and they can speak about classroom accommodations and modifications. We'll have a representative of the district. Most likely that will be your principal, maybe your vice principal, and they are qualified to provide or supervise the provision of special education services, and they know about all the resources that the school system has available. We need a person who can interpret evaluation results, and that's usually your school diagnostician. The student can be involved if appropriate. Parents can always include the child in an ARD to the level that a parent feels is suitable. I have a daughter, she's visually impaired, but she's extremely academic. And we have been bringing her to ARD meetings since she was around age 12. She's able to comprehend and speak about what she needs, what she's accomplished, and the services that she's receiving. Students will be invited to the meeting once transition services begin to be addressed. We may also have other individuals, and that includes anyone who has knowledge or special expertise regarding the student, and they can be invited by either you or the school. This may include related service providers, your behavior specialist, other district personnel. As a parent, you're entitled to bring anyone that you deem appropriate for the meeting, but always as a courtesy, we definitely recommend letting the school know ahead of time. And if you are bringing an attorney, you do have to notify the school beforehand. So we just wanted to let you know that. Certain members of the IEP team may be excused from the meeting under specific conditions. The conditions will depend on whether the team member's area of expertise is going to be discussed or modified in the meeting. The parent and the school system must both agree in writing that the member's attendance is not necessary. Okay, the what and the why. Parent Center Hub gives insight to what you should expect from an ARD meeting, and Christina is going to share that link in the chat box as well. Your annual meeting is a time to discuss your child's progress towards current goals. If we are at the end of the time frame for the goal, we should see mastery or very close. If we don't, there should be a discussion regarding the goal and why the progress is not satisfactory. We don't want to get stuck in a pattern of repeating the same goal over and over when the data shows that this goal has been unsuccessful. So if Johnny has not made adequate progress of a reading goal, we're not going to do away with all reading goals in general, but we need to change the specific goal. And things to consider: does Johnny need additional support aids? Are we expecting too much progress in a year's time? Should we maybe change how progress is being tracked? This is also a great time to discuss additional training for staff. If we see that a program is lacking proper implementation, this can be resolved by requesting additional training and supports for a child's teacher. We're going to talk about what new goals should be added for the year. The PLAF, which is present levels of academic achievement and functional performance, should be discussed and used as a tool for developing the new goals. It is important that we aim high, but we want to remain realistic so that your child has a greater chance of success. We want to talk about any changes that need to be made to the special education or related services provided for your child. Have we done any new evaluations? Is there anything you need to request? This is often the time we discuss appropriate accommodations and modifications. If we have any needs for assistive technology, and how the child is doing in related services such as speech, occupational, and physical therapy. I do want to break here for another chat opportunity. And I want to know what you feel like the biggest discussion in your annual ARD meeting. Is it focused on goals? Are we talking placement, related services, something else? What do you feel like you talk about the most in your annual ARD meeting?
Hey, Megan, we have Jim who says goals and placements. Erin, inclusion time.
Okay.
Melissa, progress and programming. I don't know if your chat's working. Is it working okay?
I think so. It's just a little slow loading.
Yeah, different parts of mine have been that way too. Let's see, Mary, the amount of time and inclusion. So 2 for inclusion. Stacy, support in the classroom and behavioral issues. Ashley,
Okay. So Ashley spends a lot of time defending her son in these ARDs.
like I saw her name, but then I was waiting for the message.
No, it's okay. Access to needed related services and amount allowed in those services from Leslie, yes. Inclusion, program in progress. Leslie says it depends on which kid.
There you go.
Absolutely. They're very individualized. Progress towards goals and strategies being implemented. Cannot say that word good. Goals in progress. Getting appropriate goals and percentages. The data. Okay. So we have a pretty fair variation of things that are discussed. Goals in progress, developing goals, making the case for services needed for the next year. Okay.
Yeah, it seemed to be a big mix of goals, progress,
and inclusion, time, placement.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And we're going to cover, like I said, we're going to cover as much of this as we can in the webinar, and then specific questions can come up at the end for the Q&A session. Okay, so as a parent or professional in the special education world, we pretty much know by now that an ARD or IEP meeting has to be held at least once per school year to be in compliance with IDEA laws. Remember that just because the law says it must be done once per year, it doesn't mean that you cannot hold additional ARD meetings or make amendments to your IEP throughout the year as needed. By inviting parents, the schools are making an effort to ensure one or both parents' participation. Written notice must be provided at least 5 school days before the meeting, unless you as a parent agree otherwise. If the time or date that the school proposes is not convenient, the school must make a reasonable accommodation and effort to find a time you are able to meet. Meetings can be held outside of the regular school hours if needed. If neither parent can attend the meeting in person, they do have the option to participate through alternative means, such as like the telephone, video conferencing. I've seen them Skype parents in, things like that. Most of the time, the ARD meeting takes place at the school because that's what is convenient for the school staff. We do want to point out that though this is usual practice, other arrangements can be made if necessary. There's no rule dictating the location of an ARD, only that it must be in an agreeable meeting place and that reasonable accommodations must be made. Do keep in mind that meetings should be confidential, so holding them in places that may have high traffic in and out are not appropriate for an ARD meeting. Okay, and we are ready for our poll. And it should have just popped up. So our question is, what areas might prompt an ARD committee to meet more often than annually? And you have A, lack of expected progress, B, results of any reevaluation, C, additional needs of the student, or D, all of the above. So you will just select one and submit. And we're going to give you just a couple of minutes to get that done. And again, you can just click on the answer, it will highlight, and you will hit submit. And it should appear here in just a minute.
Okay, Megan, do you see the results?
I do not. There we go. Okay. Now I see it. 93% went with all of the above. And you are correct. It is, you can meet for lack of expected progress because we may need to update our goals. Results of any reevaluation. Anytime there's an evaluation done, there will be an ARD to discuss that evaluation. And then additional needs of the student. Are accommodations working, modifications, do we need something different? And we can discuss those all in ARD meetings. So those are all reasons to hold a meeting more than the annual ARD date. Let's close that out. Okay. So we have annual ARD documentation. The first document you can always expect to get is your Notice of Procedural Safeguards. And you can get that once per year. And anytime you request a new evaluation, or if you just want a copy to have a copy, you can request that as well. You can find them at the link Christina put in the chat box. And guys, if you have never looked at your procedural safeguards, I want to really strongly recommend that you make time to go through them. These are your rights as a parent in the special education world, broken down by category to help you navigate through the process. And things that your procedural safeguards cover is prior written notice. So when the school is choosing to implement a change to the IEP or refusing to provide a requested service for your child. And it talks about parental consent, that you must give informed consent throughout the ARD process, from evaluations to change in services or placement. It covers your independent individual evaluations, so your IEEs. And it talks about requesting school records. And then any information regarding filing complaints, requesting mediation, or due process hearings. You will receive an ARD notice, and that should be provided at least 5 school days before the proposed meeting date. If the school wishes to hold the meeting sooner, they have to get your permission as the parent to waive the 5 days. And then you will receive the proposed IEP. So a newly written IEP should be completed and available to the parent at the close of an ARD meeting. I have been to so many ARDs, and the school will tell parents they will send it home in the child's backpack once it's ready, and they may give a timeline of when they can expect to have a copy of the IEP. However, the school is still expecting parents to sign the signature page and agree with the plan. I want to make sure that you know you have a right to review the proposed IEP before you commit. ARD meetings can be really overwhelming. We talked about this earlier. There's a lot of people talking, and there's a lot of emotion that comes into it when you're talking about your child. So at this point, you would still find that you attended, but you can request a day or two to review everything before actually agreeing. The only thing that this impacts is the 5-day waiver that starts the new services immediately. Okay, now we're on parent tips for success. Oftentimes, we can find ourselves a little overwhelmed in the process, but we know if you have the right tools that you will succeed. So number 1, find out who will be at the meeting. This way, if somebody that you want in attendance is not on that list, you can request that they attend. What is on the agenda? So do we have any draft IEP goals? Are there recommendations from related service providers or anything that you can review prior to the ARD meeting? And how much time has been allotted for the meeting? We see this at times where the school schedules meetings back-to-back in 1-hour blocks, but you have a right to request additional time or to request a recess and reconvene at a later time if not all topics were discussed. And knowing this information in advance is the ticket. Number 2, have someone you trust attend the meeting with you, because we want you to have moral support. They can help you take notes and help you stay on track. Our motto is no one goes alone. So if you need somebody, we encourage you to contact the regional coordinator in your area, and they will be able to assist you. 3, be prepared to share your thoughts, knowledge, and concerns. Your input matters. We want to keep our communication respectful, safe, and open. And we introduced a negotiation skill for parents guide in our Negotiations 101 webinar. And we will share that link now, as it gives many different strategies for getting services for your child. And again, you can grab that link in the chat box, or you can access it on the website. Number 4, I've previously mentioned this, and I'm sure you've heard me, know your present levels. This is what your goals should be based on. So knowing where your child is currently points us in the right direction for where they're going. Number 5, focus on what you want for your child and not the specifics on how to get there. The rest of the ARD committee may have some great ideas that you haven't even thought of. I want you to prepare a list ahead of time of things you hope to accomplish, the services that you are not willing to compromise on, and the ones that you are. This allows you, in the heat of the moment, to keep a calm and clear head. 6, be flexible. It's important to remember that you are setting goals this spring for the next school year. Things change, and that's okay. The great thing about an IEP is that it's individualized and should be adjusted to meet the needs of your child. If we get back to school in the fall and see something needs to be added or updated or changed, you can always request another meeting or make an amendment to the IEP. You can find more tips on a successful IEP meeting on our website, and Christina will be sharing that link now. So for now, I want to head back over to the chat box. And I want to hear tips and tricks that you've used in ARD meetings. What's some really great advice you got? What has worked for you? What would you share with other parents? Okay, so Sandra says never go to a meeting without being able to review the draft. If there is a draft IEP, you absolutely should be able to see it. Correct, Jim. And Sandra. Rebecca says bring brownies or Sonic drinks. You know, food makes friends. I don't know how many ARDs I've taken donuts to along the way that are in the morning. Phone conferences work sometimes and is a good way to include parents who cannot otherwise attend, absolutely. Bringing a picture of your kiddo. Sometimes it's really important to put a face on the paperwork because we can get so bogged down in looking at the child on paper that we don't necessarily familiarize with them. And so I think a picture is a great idea. Taking an additional person, and if a family member or friend is not available, a family advocate will gladly join them at their request. Having support, absolutely, Tina. Bottle water and fruit. Our teachers pretend to be healthy. All right. Open-ended questions give better opportunity for discussion. Yes, 100% yes. Knowing what IDEA says to support your request. Somebody else says, love the photo idea. Me too. Sandra says, I never sign until I take it home and read my child's IEP. Ashley takes the Texas Dyslexia Handbook with her. Okay. Having key points written into the meeting minutes. And asking a lot of questions to hold them accountable. Yes, I mean, this is when you really do ask those questions and say, what does this look like? I want to see the big picture and to know how this is going to be implemented, things like that. Asking a lot of help me understand questions, yes. Sorry, it's starting to go kind of fast. Knowing you can ask a health plan service coordinator to attend. Rhonda says organizing a notebook of any prior IEPs or other school documents. We have a lot of requests for food. Writing a summary to be included as part of the IEP. Being educated, being knowledgeable, yes. Be prepared and open-minded, certainly. Christina, did you see anything in there that I missed?
No.
Okay.
No, but I did see a lot of people adding questions, and I just want to let them know that I have been grabbing them and putting them on the list for the Q&A section.
Perfect. Yes, if you did ask a question, you're welcome to type them in the chat box at any time, and they will be addressed here in just a few minutes with chat. Right now, let's move over so that we can start that pretty quick here. So we want to address ESY, which, as I said, it's an extended school year. This will most likely come up in discussion in spring arts. And we pulled information from the TEA website discussing extended school year services, and that link will be in the chat box. ESY services are addressed for all children qualifying under special education, regardless of specific disability. The purpose of ESY is to ensure that students receive a free, appropriate public education, which we know is FAPE. And the need for ESY services is on an individual basis, and it can be documented through formal or informal evaluations provided by the school or parent. Things to be considered when discussing ESY is regression of skills and the time period of recoupment for the skills lost. The schools typically consider any skill that takes more than the first 8 weeks of school to recoup as a sign of severe regression. ESY services should be considered in that case. But because ESY services are case by case, not all cases require the standard regression and recoupment factor. Other factors may justify the need for extended school year, such as behavioral or social deficits. For a child diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, ESY is one of the 11 strategies in the autism supplement. Parents may be able to use this as leverage when fighting for summer services. And any questions regarding this will be addressed in the Q&A portion as well, and you can go ahead and start submitting your questions. So now on to transition tips. Transition is a huge part of your child's IEP. And that transition may be to a different school or program when they're younger, and it may be transition out of high school and into adulthood as they get older. When your student transitions from ECI to elementary, or elementary to middle, and middle into high school, you will have what is referred to as a transition ARD meeting. And this involves staff at both the current school and from the new school. You should have had an opportunity to visit programs that are being considered, or at the minimum, have program descriptions provided to you. At the meeting, the assessment results will be reviewed, and you can ask any questions you might have. Progress your child has made on their goals and objectives will also be reviewed. And the need for continuing special education services must be determined, and then new goals developed. The need for related services is reviewed, and it is only at that point that program options, so your classroom placement, should be discussed. Remember that services and placement should flow from and be aligned with your child's assessed needs and identified goals. For young adults transitioning from public school, they may be going into post-secondary education or the workforce. We have to consider many different factors. I did pull information from understood.org regarding transition services, and that link will be in the chat box. Texas requires that the ARD committee must consider transition planning no later than age 14, with transition services starting no later than age 16. Both planning and services can start at an age younger, if that's appropriate for the student. The law requires that a student should be invited to participate in all IEP meetings discussing transition. And then here is a link from TEA regarding secondary transition as well. The student will have post-secondary goals to work on in the IEP. These goals include preparing for vocational training, so if they're learning a trade, post-secondary education, college, independent living goals, community-based goals, transportation, anything like that that would prepare them for adulthood. Parents play a huge part in the transition piece of the child's life. We need to teach them early how to advocate for themselves and let them talk about their future goals so that you can help them design a plan that is realistic for their lives. Familiarize yourself with adult services. A representative for Texas Workforce Commission or another transition service agency should either be invited to your ARD meeting or should provide the school with information that will be passed on to you. You want to be knowledgeable of availability of services in order to best support your child. For more parent tips on transition, you can check out our fact sheet, and that link will be in the chat box. Okay, it is now time for the question and answer session with Chuck. If you have not already, go ahead and type your questions, and Christina will be posting questions that were asked earlier in the presentation. Hey, Chuck, are you ready to start taking some questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Can I make a comment at this point?
Of course.
Look at the questions or whatever?
Sure.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. The thing I want to start with and stress, it's been addressed, I think, kind of indirectly, but I'm a big believer that
Hey, Chuck, real quick, can you speak up? I'm getting messages that they can't hear you.
Okay, can you get some feedback? Is this any better?
Let me see. Any better? Barely better, slightly. Okay. Really?
Megan, I am.
How about this?
Whoa.
That sounds better. Okay. They're saying yes and perfect, so.
Sorry about that. It's really, to me, very important that parents identify their concerns and requests and get those to the committee, preferably ahead of time so they can be aware of them and start thinking. But also at the meeting, more detail and push them on that. We stress the importance of putting things in writing, and this is an area that if it isn't in writing, it may not have occurred. And the people trying to take notes can only get so much down. So that's important to have your concerns, requests in writing so that you can document that you started the process of sharing this with the committee, and then we can talk about strategies as we go on. What's your first question, Megan?
Let me help you out, Megan.
Thank you, because it is like very overwhelming.
I know, it didn't space, you know, my chat box was acting up. So our first question that we had early on was, what are transition services? And Chuck, I know you did a response, but would you like to talk about it again so that everybody can get the same response on what transition services are?
Yes, ma'am. What I posted was the definition from IDEA. And their definition focuses on moving the child from public school beyond. And what they talk about is moving them on to post-school activities, which includes post-secondary, college, university, vocational education, integrated employment, continuing and adult education, adult services, independent living, or community participation. So depending on your child's needs, several of those categories could apply. Megan, Christina, do you think I need to make any more comments on that, or see if there's any more questions specifically about that?
No. Well, if they have more questions specific to that, if they'll go ahead and put that in the chat box, or if they want more assistance afterwards, we can put them in touch with their RC and help them with that. Our next question is from Leslie, and she wants to know if she can invite the aide to the ARD meeting.
Invite an aide to the ARD meeting?
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. You can invite school people, school staff, people that work directly or as consultants for the school. The problem is the school doesn't have to allow them to come, but at least you go on record as requesting that they be there, and the reasons for that.
Stop calling. I don't want them.
Sorry about that. That was my phone.
Oh, okay. I thought somebody was disagreeing with what I was saying.
No, I'm very sorry. That's my ring. That was
That's
my
all right.
ringtone.
We
I'm
need
very
a little
sorry.
humor at times. You know, the old saying I grew up with, sometimes it's better to laugh than cry. But, and you can certainly ask that a statement, written statement, be provided by the person if they cannot attend. Next question.
Okay. This went back to when Megan was talking about the IEP document, getting the IEP at the end of the meeting. And we had Lindsay wanting to know if Megan was referring to the whole IEP document or just the IEP goals when you said being provided at the close of the meeting.
To me, what parents need to push for is a copy of the proposed goals and objectives before the meeting starts. And now somebody asked, does a draft document or draft of the goals, does that indicate predetermination? And my response is no, as long as the school, the team, is open to other suggestions to modify the goals and objectives or the placement decisions, those services, those kind of things. If they appear to be unwilling to change anything, then to me that is an indication of predetermination. If they propose something and are willing to change the wording, drop something, add something, those kind of things. But then as far as at the end of the meeting, having the document to read, for most of us, the way the meetings go, it's hard to remember a lot of what was said. So reading the document and the minutes, to me, is a logical approach for a person to ask for that. And in the last few years, I have heard school attorneys say to special educators that it is reasonable for a parent to ask for time to review these documents, and they suggest the school simply say, okay, here it is, bring the document, bring it back with your agreement or disagreement in the near future or in 2 days. So at least some attorneys are realizing that makes sense. A strategy I propose, if the school is unwilling to do that, a parent can simply say, okay, I disagree. I'll sign disagree. Then I want to set up another meeting within 10 days or so. And however, after I look at all the documents that you're going to give me, if I decide that I agree, then I will come back in, sign agree, and then we can cancel that next ARD meeting. So there are ways you can do it, hopefully in a low-key way that the school will go along with it. Megan, Christina, do you think I kind of got the basic things out with that answer?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay.
Megan, did you have anything?
Just that you want to see all pieces of the IEP that are applying specific to the school, like to what is being proposed for a new IEP. So that means like your goals, any added accommodations, modifications, who was in attendance, and then like your meeting minutes. That's really what you want to see before you make an agreement to sign. And so that's what I would look for specifically when you're asking for which documents before you leave the ARD.
Okay. And I would never leave without my papers when I did ARDs for my son. So they knew that I was coming and they had to print everything out.
Mm-hmm.
Depends on how you want to handle this and somewhat your relationship with the
True.
team members. But you could ask a person, would you agree to a loan without reading the details about the loan? And getting a loan for a car or whatever is not near as important as the education for your child. So I think most adults would understand that. They might not speak up and tell the diagnostician to be nice and just get the paperwork to you later, but it's a reasonable thing to want to know what's being decided. Next question.
Okay, so we had Melissa ask, because someone had mentioned in the chat box, and Megan had mentioned about the Dyslexia Handbook. So I am, Melissa, right now posting a link to that. It's on the TEA website, and you can go there and download it. All right, next question for you, Chuck.
Christina,
sure.
Before we move on, could I say something?
Absolutely.
In the report that the Office of Special Education sent TEA, a good part of their comments, criticism dealt with how TEA in the state handles dyslexia services in Texas. And because of that, the State Board of Education has a really a bigger role in the development of the handbook and the programs for kids with dyslexia than TA does. So anyway, the state board has already begun reviewing the concerns that parents, students, educators have regarding that. And they recently, last week, I think Friday, posted a survey for giving input about revising the handbook. So I encourage you, I believe it's on our website, of the link to that survey, so you can provide that information there. And there's a number of groups that are collecting information on dyslexia and that handbook to share with them. So there is an opportunity, and sometime in the next few months, there will probably be a draft of that revised document circulating. So just that's a FYI to be watching for. Next question.
Okay, before we go to the next question, looking at the time, Megan, we are going to continue to stay on and answer questions, but we like to wrap up our webinar so our recordings are about an hour long. So if you want to roll us out, and then we will continue. Don't go anywhere. We will continue the Q&A. We just need to finish the recording part.
Okay. So we have a couple of webinars coming up for April. And April 2nd was mentioned. This is the third piece of our TEA Corrective Action Plan with Steve Alleman from Disability Rights, Texas. So make sure you put that on your calendar that Monday, April 2nd at 12:15, we will be back on with Steve to discuss the TEA CAP. We also have our April statewide webinar series, Behavior Contracts to Promote Independence. That will be done with Allison Sheets and Ashley Richardson from the Texas Tech Burkhart Center for Autism Education and Research. And that will be Tuesday, April 17th, again at the 12:15. If you need to get a hold of us, you can contact Chuck at this information on your screen, or you can contact myself at the email address provided, and then you have the 800 number for Partners Resource Network. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. But we are so excited you joined us today, and we thank you for taking the time out of your day to come attend the Are We There Yet? We hope you got a lot out of it, and if you need to later on, we will have the recording posted as well as all of the links given in today's webinar for your use. And we will continue now with the Q&A portion of the webinar, so if you can stay on, great, and if not, thank you for coming, and we'll see you at the next one.